Yesterday, we learned that Donald Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, a retired four-star general, confirmed that while Donald Trump was president, he said he wanted generals like Adolf Hitler had. Donald Trump said that because he does not want a military that is loyal to the United States Constitution. He wants a military.
Does anyone else feel like if the Iran-Contra affair happened today, it wouldn't even be a weekly news item? It would, like, fade in 2 or 3 days. Like, if documents came out today that show that back in, like, 2019, something like the Iran-Contra affair happened under the Trump administration, if that came out now, it would be like, eh.
That is loyal to him. He wants a military who will be loyal to him personally.
Oh, yeah, Watergate would be nothing. Watergate, like, genuinely, Watergate is just like, we live in a society now.
One that will obey his orders even when he tells them to break the law or abandon their oath to the Constitution of the United States. In just the past week, Donald Trump has repeatedly called his fellow Americans the enemy from within, and even said that he would use the United States military to go after American citizens. And let's be clear about who he considers to be the enemy from within. Anyone who refuses to bend a knee or dares to criticize him would qualify, in his mind, as the enemy within, like judges, like journalists, like nonpartisan...
Like live streamers. I know, we're all on the docket here. I understand. I'm on the damn list. I understand.
Election officials. It is deeply troubling and incredibly dangerous that Donald Trump would invoke Adolf Hitler, the man who is responsible for the deaths of 6 million Jews and hundreds of thousands of Americans.
I know this is like a weird point to bring up, but I really do wish that we just talked about like the total number of people who died during the Holocaust. Or even during World War II, and not just the Jews, because 12 million, or 10 or something, 10, 11, 12, something like that, is the number of people who died in the Holocaust. Homosexuals, Slavs, communists, union leaders, a lot of people. And then there was the war. I mean, that was just the Holocaust. Then there's the damn war, which is tens of millions more. Mostly Soviets. Yeah, no one ever talks about the Roma. We don't believe in them here in America, except for that one reality TV show. Or what was it, reality TV?
All of this is further evidence for the American people of who Donald Trump really is. This is a window into who Donald Trump really is. From the people who know him best, from the people who worked with him side by side in the Oval Office and in the Situation Room. And it is clear from...
And Chinese. Let's not get woke now, the Radical Dino.
John Kelly's words that Donald Trump is someone who, I quote, certainly falls into the general definition of fascist, who in fact vowed to be a dictator on day one and vowed to use the military as his personal militia to carry...
Again, like, I know I've said this a million times and I'm not going to get tired of saying it. It's just crazy to me that, like, the way a liberal bureaucracy or a liberal democracy deals with this is by pointing it out, but not arresting the people doing it, you know? Like, the purpose of liberal media and liberal politicians is to go, have you noticed that those guys are Nazis? Have you noticed that those guys just seized the government? Have you noticed they're currently leading me to a concentration camp? Have you noticed they turned the dial on the Zyklon B canisters that are flooding the chamber that I'm currently in? Like, it's like, you gotta do something about it? It's just crazy that it's all legal. Like, you can just do anything. You can't steal a Twix bar, a harmless crime because Twix bars are mid. But you can do the Fourth Reich, and it's like, oh, yeah, well, as long as enough people want it, not even 50% because of the Electoral College.
Out his personal and political vendettas. Donald Trump is increasingly unhinged and unstable. And in a second term, people like John Kelly would not be there to be the guardrails against his propensities and his actions. Those who once tried to stop him from pursuing his worst impulses would no longer be there. and no longer be there to rein him.
I also hate the way this is being framed as purely Trump being unstable. It's the entire Republican Party, and it's not a matter of instability. It's the political doctrine of fascism. You can't have it both ways. You can't say Donald Trump is a fascist, pursuing a fascist ideology, and then also go, oh, well, it's because he's like old and unstable and egotistical. That's like, it's the ideological framework. By scapegoating all of this onto Trump, you know, like, oh, it's Trump's instability. Dude, it's the whole damn party. And it's not just his instability. They are in a very stable fashion trying to end the democracy. Like it's not a consequence of irrational. I mean, it's irrational in the sense that it's anti-empirical, but it's not irrational in the sense that they're not acting in a controlled manner. They're trying to bring about a certain outcome. We get it, Vosh, but he's the figurehead. Yeah, so what happens? Donald Trump slips down the stairs, dies in, you know, a puddle of his own shit, and then they get another fascist in front, and then we have another 8 years of plausible deniability. Republicans are like, you know, yeah, watch us take away every democratic right you have, and Democrats are like, okay, well, at least he's not Orange Man Drumpf. It's the party.
So the bottom line is this. We know what Donald Trump wants. He wants unchecked power. The question
again, it's like, it's not even Trump who's pulling the strings here, man. Trump is a dangerous egotist, sure, but like the Republican Party is trying to institute a fascist government. That's what Project 2025 is all about. You've promoted knowledge of Project 2025. You are aware of the fact that this is a doctrine. This is not just like one guy losing control.
The question in 13 days will be, what do the American people want? Thank you.
Do you have any reaction to what the president said about locking him up?
The Legal Ego video endorsing Harris had this issue. For whatever reason, he said that if DeSantis was standing and said he would tell his viewers to make their own choice. Really? Did he really say that? DeSantis is just as bad, if not worse, than Trump. Trump himself is, if anything, like a buffer, because he's so self-interested that he's an ineffective like tool for the powers that be to destroy our democracy. Like DeSantis would more effectively tear the country apart. Legal Eagle is still a liberal? Yeah, but like liberal or leftist, you're going to the camps too if we lose. It's like you can't, it's not just Trump. What's the coverage after this? CNN?
The question in 13 days will be.
We've been listening to Vice President Kamala Harris speaking there from the Vice President's residence at the Naval Observatory, essentially calling out Donald Trump, reiterating reporting that Trump's former Chief of Staff, John Kelly, told reporters that Trump invoked Hitler during conversations, saying that he wanted generals that were as loyal as Hitler's generals. She went on to say that it is deeply troubling and dangerous that Trump would compare himself to Hitler. Obviously, the former German leader responsible for millions of deaths, hundreds of...
Thank you. Got to appeal to the, you know...
thousands of American deaths, millions of Jews killed in the Holocaust. She described Trump as unhinged and unstable, and also added
like,
that...
genuinely, the way they talk about the Holocaust is really weird, man. No one ever talks about the Soviets who were killed either. Like, a lot of Soviets were killed. A lot of Soviet civilians. A lot of them died in camps. Just, I don't know. It's like that thing that I mentioned a little while ago where like your history classes in America never teach you about the anti-Semitism that Nazis promoted. Like they just tell you that the Nazis hated Jews. They don't explain anything about fascism ideologically. They never sit you down and they're like, okay, so here's the reason why things got to this point. Like here's the like series of events. Here's the ideological framework that led to like the worst war in human history and so many people being killed, you know, and like explaining in a methodological sense, like how that built up. Instead, they're just like, well, yeah, Hitler was, you know, anti-Semitic and hateful. They just do like bad man bad. American history classes are just fairy tale like mythology. In a lot of cases, yeah, certainly the way they cover the founding fathers, whereas like Hitler's the bad guy. He is the bad guy, but like, you know, I think it would be kind of instructive to understand what made him bad and why he was bad, so we could maybe avoid that in the future if possible. I went to school in a Jewish neighborhood in Canada. The propaganda was heavily discussed in school. I mean, I went to a Jewish neighborhood in America, and I remember it wasn't. I'm not to say it was never discussed, just like not nearly enough. I mean, let's be real here. Like, there's a reason why World War II gets so much attention, and it's not just because it was a world war. It's because that, like, ideologically, it's much more relevant than anything you could really learn about beforehand. Oh, you learn about the Magna Carta or Martin Luther or such and such. You can learn about World War One. What lessons are there to learn from World War One? You know? Like, really think in it. Like, what lessons are there to learn? There are some. I'm not saying it's worthless to learn about. I'm just saying it's kind of, you know, head in the weeds war, you know? World War II, it's like, goddamn, dude, we're still fighting that war. That war never ended. The Nazis never went away.
That in a second Trump administration, there would be no John Kellys around to restrain him from his worst instincts.
Yeah, she's trying to say that he is increasingly unhinged and unstable, and that what he wants is unchecked power. She's trying to say, you've seen him before, but actually this is going to be a different thing if he is reelected. We have a soundbite. Let's listen to it.
Certainly, the former president is in the far right area.
But the framing is always its exceptionality, thus obfuscating the framework of fascism. Yeah, no, very, very true. Yeah, people, the Nazis get talked about like they're exceptional. Dude, fascism and Nazism are not exceptional ideologies. They're very common. They're very common. The thing that made the Nazis distinct was their industrial application of genocide. The concept of genocide is not new, certainly not to the Nazis. And that was more of a technological advancement than anything. The advent of totalitarianism, of the Holocaust, of industrialized genocide, those are technological changes. The underlying ideology, while materially influenced, is not exceptional. There are lots of fascists in the world today. Most of them don't know they're fascists. Maybe Intelligent Donkey, though I don't think most liberals are, like, conscious of that fact, you know? I don't think liberals are thinking, like, no, this contradicts my narrative. I think it's, you know, narratives are self-reinforcing, right? Like, if you believe that, you tend to believe that there's no reason that you need to avoid evidence in order to continue believing that.
Yeah, he's certainly an authoritarian, admires people who are dictators. He has said that. So he certainly falls into the general definition of fascist, for sure. He commented more than once that, you know, that Hitler did some good things too.
And those are some of the comments that have created this moment that Harris is
My God, Trump is a Hearts of Iron 4 player. He's fallen in.
Trying to capitalize here in this race. Let's bring in our panel here to talk a little bit about this. Kristen Soltis-Anderson, Karen Finney, and Jim Sciutto with us. Kristen, what do you think about what you're seeing here as Harris is trying to highlight this moment, which does sort of hew to the reporting that we've had at CNN, which is that she does want to do this. She wants to highlight where Donald Trump is having these moments that may be alarming to some voters.
I think it's clear that the strategy...
Love the language, too. Like, might be alarming to some voters. You know, everything has to be framed through this, like... There's no such thing as an existential threat in the liberal framework, because existential threat implies that the institutions can never be defeated, and they can't, right? To a fascist, everything is an existential threat. To the liberal, nothing is, because the institutions are eternal and invulnerable.
In the last week or two has been to pivot back to this messaging about Donald Trump as a threat to democracy. And I suspect the reason for this is that they view very reliable Republican voters who are skeptical of Donald Trump, maybe not as someone that they could convince to outright vote for Harris, but they can convince them, do you really want to go to sleep at night knowing you voted for Donald Trump? And if they can plant that seed in the minds of enough of these Republicans who really don't like Trump, I think it's clear that that is a strategy they want to pursue. This reporting is obviously pretty serious, and it seems clear with her taking the bold step of saying, I'm going to do a press conference in the middle of the day, not taking questions, but I'm going to do a statement in the middle of the day. It's clear this is a message they want to drive home.
Yeah, I think there's actually a couple of other things, too. I was in Pennsylvania over the weekend, and women voters who I spoke to who had previously voted for Trump, what they said was, he keeps talking about revenge, and I'm worried. What about me? This is a woman who's concerned about Social Security, recently diagnosed with cancer. So
literally all Trump ever talks about is himself. It's like, I mean, I know that, like, it's obvious, and I'm kind of screaming from the rooftop to an audience that already agrees with me. But it's like anytime Trump is asked any question about anything, he either talks about how he's the most persecuted man in history, or how he did the best job in history, or how he's going to do the best job in history. He never, ever, ever talks about anyone other than himself. He's like so comically narcissistic that you would think he was a comic book character if he was in a comic book. Which I guess is kind of self-evident because he's in a comic book, but he certainly reads like one.
Her health care is on her mind. I don't hear him talking about...
Except when he's praising fascists. That's literally true. The only time that he will go out of his way to compliment other people is if they are a fascist from a foreign nation that hates America. Literally, that's the only time. If you're Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un, Viktor Orban, you know, Javier Milei back when he was relevant and not like dying in Florida or whatever, those are the only times he will go out of his way. Or if they have fat meat. That's true.
I hear him talking about revenge.
Me too.
And my husband and I are worried about that. So I think part of it is also to say, if he's so focused on revenge...
I mixed up Milei and Bolsonaro. Oh, Bolsonaro, sorry, yeah. Well, he has spoken positively about Milei, but yeah, mostly Bolsonaro.
Revenge, he's not going to be focused on you. So voting for him is a risk. Is it a risk you're willing to take? And we think he's not focused on you, he's focused on himself. And so I think they're trying to do a couple of things and frankly, suppress votes of people who may not vote for her, but maybe they just say, you know what, I'm just not going to vote this time.
That's not what suppression of votes means. That's not what that term means. Saying, hey, you are about to vote for a Nazi, and then them not voting because they don't want to vote for a Nazi is not suppressing votes.
And won't vote for him again.
Jim, in your most recent book, you actually published conversations you had with the former chief of staff, John Kelly, in which he details this fascination that Trump has for Hitler.
Praise. I mean, if there's a historical figure that you would think everyone could agree on, you cannot say a kind word about, it would be Adolf Hitler. I expect, right? So let me quote John Kelly's firsthand.
This is a radically partisan take in current media. This is like as far left as you can be on CNN.
Account. John Kelly, 40-year Marine general, rose from enlisted men to the highest rank, a 4-star general, Gold Star father as well. Here is his firsthand account of Trump talking about Hitler. He said, well, Hitler, he did some good things. I said, well, what? And he said, well, Hitler rebuilt the economy. But what did he do with that rebuilt economy? He turned it against his own people and against the world. And I said, sir, you could never say anything good about the guy, nothing. I mean, Mussolini was a great guy by comparison. I should also note that Kelly recounted how he, much like Jeffrey Goldberg found in his Atlantic piece, also talked about how Nazi generals, Hitler's generals, were more loyal to him than American generals were to Trump. Now, this is, again, his chief of staff recounting words he heard from Trump in his face directly. The other point I would make about this is that the praise for Hitler and the praise for strongmen authoritarians around the world is not limited to him, because Trump has said and continues to say, and by the way, not in private, but in public, kind and praising words about Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un, Viktor Orban.
Quit watching my streams.
Who are not just authoritarians, but have committed crimes against their own people, right? Turned the state against their own people. And of course, he's saying...
Didn't Hitler's war tank the economy? Well, yeah, we conquered them. You know, they lost the war. Hitler never really rebuilt the economy, like, actually. 2 points. One, by 1939, like, the world at large had been experiencing a significant rebound economically. Like, it's not like by that point the New Deal hadn't been kicking America's ass into gear. Second of all, it's easy to get a quick economic rebound if you transition into a war economy. Third of all, a lot of his economic growth was sustained off of the conquest from World War II, you know? The whole Nazi gold thing. I mean, all I'll say is, if your economy is sustained by taking out and selling the gold fillings that you're taking from the mouths of people you put in gas chambers, that's probably not like a sustainable economic model. You know, if 30% of your GDP is reselling the boots that you've taken off people that you've put, like, filled dishes with, you're probably not like this. It's probably not a good model for long-term growth.
Those praising things as he's talking about an enemy within in this country. So the comments aren't just shocking, they're also consequential in that they give you a sense of how he might govern.
We want to keep this conversation going, but we do want to go to Elena Treen, who is in Georgia following Donald Trump, because there is some reaction from the Trump campaign. Elena, what are you hearing?
Nuh-uh.
That's right, there is. We have heard a number of
Of course, they didn't mention Netanyahu when they mentioned dictator friends of Trump. No, of course not, because he's friends with Biden too, you know, friends.
Trump advisors and people like Mark Meadows, Kash Patel really heavily push back on this. I'm going to read for you something that Stephen Chung, a top Trump campaign advisor, told me in response to some of this last night. He said, quote, that Kelly had totally beclowned himself with these debunked stories he has fabricated because he failed to serve his president well while working as chief of staff and currently suffers from a debilitating case of Trump derangement syndrome. So
spectacular. I know that liberals are never going to understand this because they hate me and life and common sense and reason, but I hope that all of this is read in the future as a scathing indictment of neoconservatism. You had a party that all the way up until 2016 was obsessed with the military, with stern, like older white guys with 45 years of service, with institutional power, with like American supremacy, and over the course of 8 years, one guy, Donald Trump, turned all of those people into raving America-hating fascists who disbelieve the words of every single institutional force and individual they used to believe in. Like, literally everything the Republicans aesthetically adopted and stood for got turned on its head like that, you know? Serve as president. Yeah, I do like how even in the rejection of this story, they are still acknowledging that the story's underlying statement is correct. John Kelly has totally beclowned himself with these debunked stories because he is fabricated because he failed to serve his president well. He doesn't serve the president. That's not who military officers swear their oath to. Like, even in the rejection of the story, it's like they reaffirm the underlying premise, you know? To be fair, this was his position as chief of staff. If you are making a statement where you're rejecting the premise that Donald Trump didn't want his soldiers to be essentially loyal to him rather than the Constitution, I really feel like if you're in that rejection, if your statement is, yeah, they failed to serve the president well, then that's kind of like a perfect... You understand what I mean here, right?
clearly they are pushing back very heavily on this. But I do want to take a step back because I have covered Donald Trump for a number of years. I also was covering the White House when John Kelly was serving as Donald Trump's chief of staff. And I think it's important to add the context of who John Kelly is. He served in the military. Also, I'd note that his son was killed, and he also served in the military. So this is something that is deeply personal to Kelly. I know that, you know, he is someone who very much takes the Constitution very seriously, and he took that role very seriously. I think that's why when you listen to some of the recordings from the New York Times, you heard him say that he had told Donald Trump in the past while they were in the White House that I don't serve you, I'm serving the Constitution. So that's some of the context around this. But also, I don't think we can overstate how big of a development this is, coming just 2 weeks before the election.
It's
we know
not
that
going
it's
to
not
lead
just
to anything.
Kelly, among those who had served with Donald Trump when he was in office, who have been kind of trying to raise alarm bells about what it would mean for him to be president once again. We've also heard criticisms from Mark Milley, from Jim Mattis, from John Bolton, from Bill Barr, a lot of people who had served with him. And I think the timing of these comments is important because I think, you know, you're really seeing people in the 11th hour now say a lot of this publicly.
Not going to lead to anything. Crazy that they held back on this for so long only to release it in a book. Yeah, like if you want to know whether or not Republicans will give a shit about this, let's take a look at the Fox News video feed. Any coverage of Kamala Harris's little press statement in front of her house? I don't see it. Not seeing any mention of this. Not seeing any mention at all. Yep. The average Republican will never hear about this, and if they do hear about it, they'll say it's fake news because all the media sources they keep up with didn't mention it. Or they'll agree with him, yeah. A lot of right-wingers don't even like Fox anymore. Enough of them still like Fox. Fox had, like, after January 6th, Fox had a brief period where they kind of pulled away from Trump a little bit, possibly in anticipation of there being political consequences to being associated with him. But once it was made clear that there were no consequences whatsoever to attempting to overthrow the United States government, they went back in with it. There was a window of time from, like, I don't know, like mid-November 2020 to mid-2021 where Fox News was playing it a little bit more neutral. But after that, like, they went right back in. Yeah, this is why I thought this had been mentioned before, because the news story about the information that was contained in the book that only recently released. This was back in 2021. Spectacular stuff. The book is from 2021. It's not new. Isn't this stuff from the release? Why is it being talked about then or now then? Isn't this from the release of that book that one journalist that I'm forgetting the name of right now put out? The one that had a bunch of other bombshells that no one gives a fuck about? It's from the new Bob Woodward book. Yeah. Woodward. Thank you. No, it's not Woodward. This is not from Woodward. Whatever. I don't really care. Getting lost in the details. Brian Kilmeade justifying the Trump Hitler quote. That's cool, man.
Others. But the bottom line is, if you read H.R. McMaster's book, who is critical of President Trump in some of it and not in others, he talks about how Madison Kelly didn't like the president, and they didn't think he deserved the job, or they didn't think he was worthy of the job, and they went out of his way to make sure a lot of the things they asked him to do that they didn't like never got done. McMaster would be frustrated because he couldn't get their attention, and he would say, it's not your job to rein in the president. It's your job to do what the president wants. And then you factor in the fact that he runs his own company, coming from the business world, the first one we've ever had.
The president's cabinet's job is definitionally to provide advice and instruct the president. That's what they're there for.
It's not even a public company. And then he obviously has frustration. And I could absolutely see him go, now, you know what? It would be great to have German generals that actually do what we asked them to do, knowing that's a third, maybe not fully being cognizant of the third rail of German generals who were Nazis and whatever. But he was frustrated with the slowdown of
It wasn't just a slow.
This is like low IQ American Nazism. In a way, it's even more degraded than authentic, like original Nazism, because you're hitting all the same beats, but you're too stupid. Like you can't say it like openly. You know, you can't scream, "I am Adolf Hitler" into the microphone. So you gesture at every point, every cultural, every policy signal, while, you know, you get these like blustering half defenses.
Down, it was insubordination. And there is a culture within Washington, not just when it comes to the generals, who, by the way, should be fired after what happened in Afghanistan, of insubordination in the sense that the bureaucrats run the government. The founders did not design this country to be that way.
This is like literally Nazi propaganda. Actually, it would be good for Trump to have generals that are as loyal as the Nazi generals. They need to obey him because our bureaucracy is controlled by a nefarious group of people that secretly run the government, even though the founding fathers wouldn't have wanted that. And Donald Trump is fighting against them. This is literally like point for point, the JQ. Just rather than mentioning the J, they're just saying, like, you know, they're gesturing at like the concept of the conspiracy without naming a specific group. Like, literally, listen to this. Listen to how identical this is to Nazi propaganda.
It was insubordination. And there is a culture within Washington, not just when it comes to the generals, who, by the way, should be fired after what happened in Afghanistan, of insubordination in the sense that the bureaucrats run the government. The founders did not design this country to be that way. Unelected people don't get to run the country, even if you have 4 stars behind your name. And I think they were very frustrated that you had this outside guy that says, listen, I'm in charge now.
It's literally like word for word the same point, you know? Our government is corrupt and weak because it's been overtaken by shadowy bureaucrats, unelected bureaucrats who work against the interests of the people. And Donald Trump, our glorious hero, our strongman, is coming in from the outside position of being a, you know, generationally wealthy New York real estate billionaire. We have the guy coming in from the outside to, you know, defeat the bureaucrats and restore this nation to its former glory. But in order to do that, he needs loyal men on the inside who are willing to obey his every order and not fall like complacent or, you know, hold him back in his actions against the bureaucrats. It's one for one, man. This is what the average Republican is going to see. Yippee! Funny how in defending the Electoral College, it's Republic, not a democracy. That doesn't mean anything. Republicans like saying that because they don't like democracy. Republic and democracy aren't like mutually exclusive concepts at all. The Heritage Foundation published a list of targets in the DHS. That's cool. The DHS watch list, America's most subversive immigration bureaucrats. The DHS bureaucrat watch list is dedicated to exposing the career staff who has outsized influence on efforts to secure the southern border. While everyone knows who Alejandro Mayorkas and Merrick Garland are, few Americans know who the career bureaucrats are that implement their orders. By uncovering hidden agendas and failures, we aim to restore integrity to our immigration system and border protection by showing America who can be counted on to reform America's broken immigration system and who is in league with left-wing open border groups. Join, because the people who made this website aren't very bright. They hide the text of the paragraph behind the image of the background. Join us in defending our borders and reclaiming America's sovereignty. Not by the Heritage Foundation, it's by the American Accountability Foundation. They're on the P2025 Advisory Board. Okay, so associated with the Heritage Foundation. They got little baseball card fact sheets on these people. Salary, grade, profession, employment history. Jennifer Higgins revealed between $25,000 and $65,000 in credit card debt in her financial disclosure form at interest rates between 21.24% and 23.74%. Debt of this amount under these interest rates could raise concerns about financial mismanagement. Did you know that she has a credit card debt? It's repeatedly spoke on diversity panels and advocated for diversity quotas in hiring. That's cool. Yeah, in America, not having credit card debt, if anything, is more of a red flag. Aileen Cannon is on the list for AG candidates under Trump. That's cool. It's, again, like, nothing matters. Nothing is illegal. Everything is allowed. The judge who tossed the classified documents case in Mar-a-Lago, yeah, we'll make you an AG. If you protect me legally, I will promote you. Elon, you're giving me lots of money and using the America PAC to, like, bribe voters in Pennsylvania. You get to be on the cabinet. Aileen Cannon, you protect me legally from the documents case. Congratulations. You get to be AG. Cannon's name is just one among several potentially controversial candidates for the nation's top law enforcement post should Trump win re-election, according to sources familiar. Nice.
Plus, that Judge Aileen telling ABC News the judge who threw out Donald Trump's classified documents case is now on a list of potential candidates to be Attorney General if Trump wins. Here's our chief Washington correspondent, Jonathan Karl.
Tonight, sources tell it.
He also floated Ken Paxton of Texas for AG. I'm genuinely not kidding. If Ken Paxton gets made AG after Trump wins the presidency, that's like you all need to hole up in your houses, sandbag your windows, and stockpile beans kind of situation. Ken Paxton has literally said that he would gladly enforce anti-sodomy laws if the Supreme Court would let him.
ABC News, the federal judge who dismissed the criminal case against Donald Trump for allegedly mishandling classified documents, is now under consideration for the role of Attorney General if Trump wins back the White House. The sources tell us that Judge Aileen Cannon is now on a list of several possible candidates for the job. It's a list circulating within the Trump campaign and transition operation. Her name appears on a document reviewed by ABC News titled Transition Planning Legal Principles, which lists potential candidates for White House counsel's office, the Justice Department, and the FBI if Trump wins. Sources tell us that
Paxton might be less protected in Washington than he is in Texas. If Trump wins, you know they can just do whatever they want, right? Like, it's not a matter of what they legally can do. It's just a matter of what they can do, which is everything.
The document was drafted by top Trump advisors, including Boris Epstein, who oversees Trump's legal team and is one of his closest aides. Trump nominated Judge Cannon to the federal bench in 2020, lavishing her with praise when she was assigned to preside over the classified documents case, which was brought by special counsel Jack Smith.
I'm very proud to have appointed her, but she's very smart and very strong and loves our country. I mean, loves our country. We need judges that love our country, so they do the right thing.
The documents case was seen as the most dire legal threat to Trump after the FBI seized boxes of highly classified documents at Mar-a-Lago.
But then, because nothing matters and there are no consequences to committing crimes as a wealthy and powerful person, the case was given to a radically pro-MAGA judge, and then she just tossed it out.
Including some stored in an ornate bathroom and others on the stage in the club's ballroom. But for months, Judge Cannon handed prosecutors one defeat after another, ultimately throwing the case out entirely, declaring Smith's appointment as special counsel unconstitutional.
But
Trump praised her as brilliant.
I think she's a brilliant woman. I think she handled a scam It's a scam case.
The Trump campaign had no immediate comment to our reporting about Judge Cannon, but I spoke to Donald Trump late yesterday, and he said that he wasn't ready to talk about the work of his transition team or any of the appointments he might make if he gets back to the White House, telling me...
Wasn't Cannon's jurisdiction over the case questionable at best? No. I mean, they shouldn't have chosen her to take the case, but it wasn't like procedurally a problem. Hey, as long as we're feeling sorry for ourselves, did you know that Progressive Victory is implementing a touch grass final hurdle for the election? I know, it's crazy. Oh no, they've doxed my email account. Touch Grass Weekends. Thanks for signing up to touch some grass. These final 2 weekends are the most important for doing Get Out the Vote outreach. And PV is here to help you find a door-knocking event near you so you can touch some grass and talk to voters at their doors. Here's how it works. You fill out the form with some of your information, and using that information, Progressive Victory will search your area for a high-quality door-knocking event near you and sign up for it using the info you provide. The sign-up forms these campaigns use require this information to join the event. Once you're signed up, you'll get an email from the campaign with instructions on how to join. Pretty nice. Now, if you're interested in doing some last hurdle door knocking, which you should be on account of the whole we're all gonna die thing, get to work, folks. You don't even need to be in Wisconsin or whatever the you don't need to be part of their local state houses. You can be wherever you are. You just fill out the form and then you got it. Get linked up with some local stuff. Pretty good. Pretty good. Gotta recommend it. What door knocking events are there in Tennessee? You have to fill out the form.